What's up YouTube, I'm Guy, and today on the channel we're going to be looking at an Alpina Startimer Pilot Automatic watch. You might remember a couple of weeks ago I reviewed a watch from Frederic Constant. That watch was loaned to me by them directly for review. When I was in discussions with them about reviewing one of their watches, they had asked if I'd also like to have an Alpina watch. Of course, absolutely, why wouldn't I? And I'm really happy to have that watch here today. Now, I was familiar with the brand Alpina. My impressions of the brand were pretty positive to start with, but I didn't know a lot about the history, and there's some interesting facts that you might not be aware of. Founded in 1883, the brand name Alpina wasn't really registered and implemented until 1901 or thereabouts. It was originally just a collective of watchmakers and producers that were working together in order to form a foundation or a relationship in which they could better produce and distribute watches more affordably, I guess is the way that I understand it. Now, in the early 1900s, they opened branches in Germany and largely were manufacturing their watches out of those branches for close to 90 years. Unfortunately, the quartz crisis took a toll on the brand in the 1970s, and by the late 1990s, they became insolvent and more or less disappeared. In 2002, the brand was purchased by Frederic Constant and reintroduced or unveiled to the world at Basel World 2003. Frederic Constant wanted to continue with the tradition and the heritage of this company, building rugged, durable sports watches that embody the spirit of alpinism and exploration and also come in at an affordable price point. And that's what they have achieved over the course of the last roughly 15 or so years. Now, of course, Frederic Constant owned the brand Alpina at that point, but in 2016, as we know, Frederic Constant, and by extension this brand Alpina, were purchased by the Citizen Group or the Citizen Corporation from Japan. I don't see it, though, as if Citizen is forcing either FC or Alpina to really change the way they do business, though. They're not changing their designs. They're still very true to what they have been doing over the last decade or more. So, that's really good news. They're definitely unique and distinct, and I think when you see this watch up close, you'll agree that it's something that's a little bit different, but definitely really good quality. The heritage and the history of the brand notwithstanding, this is actually a really cool watch. There are a few things that I don't love about it, and we'll talk about those when I jump over to the tabletop and show you the watch up close. In particular, the size. It's a very large watch, and the majority of watches that Alpina produces are on the larger side. So this watch coming in at 44 millimeters, honestly, just starts to exceed what I'm comfortable with on my personal, wrist and daily wear time. But the majority of their watches are really not much smaller than 42 millimeters with a few exceptions. Certainly it's a downfall for me, being slightly smaller wristed, but I know there's a lot of you guys out there that are going to enjoy this watch, and I think you're going to be interested in learning a little bit more about it. So without any more further ado, I'll jump over to the tabletop, I'll show you this watch up close, and let you know what I think about it. Alright guys, here we have the Alpina Startimer Pilot Automatic. Reference number on this watch, AL525S4S6. MSRP on this watch, $995. That's probably going to be one of the cons, in my opinion, of this watch. And while it's not a bad watch whatsoever, the problem is that it is found on gray market for much less than that, $625 to $650. And on the pre-owned market, I'm seeing it selling for around $350 to $400. So, definitely not due to the quality of the watch, but due to the retained value aspect, I feel like that MSRP is a touch on the high side. Definitely do some shopping around if you're interested in this watch. Other than that, though, I do actually like this watch quite a bit. First things we'll talk about, we will get into the case dimensions here. We have a case diameter coming in at 44 millimeters, with a lug width here of 22 millimeters. Overall thickness is actually pretty impressive. We have a thickness of just just a hair under 11 millimeters is what I'm getting on my calipers. And we have a lug-to-lug distance from one side of the case to the other of just a hair under 53 millimeters, maybe about 52 and a half. Overall, the proportions on this watch are very large. It is a big, chunky watch. There's no way to get around that. This is probably not going to appeal to a lot of guys that have smaller wrists. My wrists of roughly 6 3/4 inches. I find it to be just a little bit too big for me. I think I could pull it off at 42 millimeters with a slightly shorter lug-to-lug, maybe around 50 millimeters, but at this size, it's unfortunately just a little bit too big. That said, that's just my personal taste. That's a subjective opinion. This is probably going to work for a lot of people. The features of this watch, it does have some really nice features. First of all, we have a sapphire crystal, and as you see, I am panning it over towards my studio lights. You get a little bit of that blue sheen. They don't say that it's anti-reflective coated on the website, but my perception of it in looking at it is that it probably does have an AR coating because, like I said, you're getting this little bit of a blue tint when you catch it in the light. And it does perform really well in bright conditions that would probably cause glare on a lot of similar watches. We also have a screw-down crown over at the 3 o'clock position, and you can see that crown is signed with the Alpina logo. The shape of the crown is interesting. It's kind of conical shaped, and we'll take a look at that a little bit more closely here in a few moments. We do get water resistance, as you can see listed on the dial, of 100 meters, 330 feet. That's impressive. And the movement, that is something else that not a lot of information available. On their website, they just call it the AL525. And doing a little bit of research, what I can find out is that the AL25 or AL525 movement is really just a Sellita SW200-1. It is a 26 joule automatic bidirectional winding movement with hand winding and hacking. It has a 38-hour power reserve, runs at 28,800 vibrations or beats per hour, and of course has a date complication, as you can see over at the 3 o'clock position there. Overall, it's a pretty simple, pretty basic watch, but it is durable, it's rugged, that's my perception of it. It does embody that sense of kind of like exploration that they're going for in, the Alpina brand. They want that like alpinist feel to it. However, it is certainly through and through also a pilot's watch. If we look at the dial here, and let's talk about that first, you have a very typical, well, not exactly typical, but obviously a pilot-inspired, Flieger-inspired design on the dial. We have those large applied Arabic numerals 1, 2, 4, 5, 7, 8, 10, 11 with some, so what would we say, not sideways maybe, I don't know, sideways oriented stick markers at the 12, 3, 6, and 9. It's actually a really attractive looking dial. Of course, we have a matte white finish on the dial. The markers themselves are applied, and they are black markers filled with a white superluminova luminescent material. We'll talk about that lume here in a few minutes. In looking at the dial a little bit more closely, we can see that we have a semi-railroad track style second or minute scale on the outer edge of the dial with Arabic numerals at each 5-second or 5-minute interval. A slight embellishment on the graduations or hash marks found at each of those positions on the dial. We have a couple of, other than this monochromatic theme, a couple of hints of red. You can see up at the 12 o'clock side there, you have this little red triangle above the 12 marker, the Alpina branding, and then on the counterbalance of the seconds hand, you can clearly see there's also a red triangle in keeping with that Alpina logo, theming or styling, if you will. The handset is very nice, solid black handset filled with that same white superluminova luminescent paint. It's kind of a leaf style handset, I suppose. Not my favorite style of handset, though it does work here very well. That minute hand goes all the way out to the very border of the seconds track. Makes it very, very easy to set this watch to a synced up, known, accurate time source. I use the website time.is when I want to sync up my clocks. It works really well. Of course, over at the 3 o'clock position here, you can see we have a date window. I'm not in love with the implementation of this date window. It's very plain, And that's in its own right isn't bad, but it's small. It's a white wheel with very small black text on a white dial. You sort of almost forget it's there. Maybe that's a good thing. To be honest, I would prefer if this was just a no-date watch. I think it would really work a little bit better if there was no date complication at all. And again, the implementation of it is nothing particularly impressive, to be perfectly honest. At the 6 o'clock side here, you can see we have automatic 100 meters, 330 feet. Down at the very bottom of the dial, we have Swiss made. On the dial, again, you can see we have really nice black applied markers going all the way around. They're implemented really well. They look great. You get excellent contrast. Very legible dial, to say the least. Overall, I really like the implementation of this dial. It's very attractive. It's also available in a couple different color combinations, so you have some choices there. If you don't love the white version, there's a black version. There might be one or two other options, and then there's a couple of other styles that are a little bit different, with like the date complication being a subdial at the 6 o'clock position as opposed to having a date window at the 3 o'clock position. There's a lot of options in the Alpina catalog though, so you can definitely find something that works for you if you can handle this 44 millimeter case diameter. I had mentioned that we have this signed crown over at the 3 o'clock position. It is a screw down crown. The interesting thing about it is the shape. It's kind of conical in shape, as you can see here. I would say that the usage and manipulation of the crown is so-so, and while it's certainly large enough to grip and manipulate, the threading of the crown, it's not absolutely outstanding, in particular trying to reseat it down. I mean, it's doable for sure. It's just not some of the best. Hand winding the movement has a very nice fluid hand winding action. I have no complaints with that. Of course, pulling the crown out to the first position to set the date and the second position to hack the movement is, perfectly fine. Let's go ahead and set the time back just a little bit here so the handset is out of the way. Pushing it back in all the way is, easy enough. And then again, it's that downward pressure to reseat the crown is kind of where I have my issues with it. Just as you can see here, getting it started, and the fact that it's so very tight in screwing it back down, just a little bit of a problem. It's, not the end of the world. Otherwise, though, the texturing, the knurling on the crown, the grip of the crown, it's executed very well. I have no other real significant problems with it. The case is done really well. If you take a look at the lugs, you can see that the entirety of the case is satin brush finished, with the exception of a nice little bevel or chamfered edge that goes from the body of the case and kind of gets a little bit larger down to the edge of the lugs. The lugs themselves, as you can see here, curve downwards very, very nicely to ride very low on the wrist, compared with or coupled with the very, very flat low case back, as you can see here. It's a very comfortable watch to wear on the wrist, despite the fact that, again, it is just a hair a little bit big in my opinion. But the overall finishing of the case is excellent. With the exception of those beveled or chamfered edges, the only other position or part of the case that is polished, if we can pick it up here on camera, is this bezel. And it seems like the bezel is integrated into the case. It's not a removable or attachable bezel. But that also does have a high stainless steel polished finish as well. The caseback is a screw-down caseback. As you can see here, it is engraved rather deeply with the Alpina branding, has this sort of mountain motif, some striations, kind of doing like this sunburst effect in the background, and then a little information around the perimeter of the caseback. Overall, it's very nice. It's implemented really well. This strap is actually really quite decent. Probably if this was going to be like a watch in my collection, I would keep it on this strap. It's a nice leather strap. It's black on the top side with contrast stitching. It's got squared out holes for the standard pin buckle, which I'll show you in a second. The rear side of the strap has a very nice soft light tan or light brown lining. Overall, yeah, the implementation of it is very well done. On the opposing side here, if I can get it into frame, we have a nice signed buckle, signed with the Alpina logo. It's a typical tang style or pin buckle, as you can see here. And we have a pair of keepers, one sewn in and another floating keeper here to aid in the retention of the strap when it's on your wrist. I'll do a quick wrist shot of this watch on my 6 3/4 inch wrist. I mean, typically I don't do wrist shots. I don't find a lot of value in it unless there's something interesting to look at. In this case, the interesting aspect is the size of the watch. As you can probably see, this watch is definitely testing the absolute outer limits of my wrists. It's big, it's bold, it's not bulky, it's not heavy. It's just because of the mostly dial presentation, there's not a big thick bezel. The case is really subdued in comparison to the presentation of that dial. Yeah, it wears big because it is big. It presents big. If you like larger watches, if you like the style of Flieger watch that is sort of true to the origins of being, just a big watch in general, is, what they were, this is definitely going to be a good option for you. You might think that crown is going to possibly interfere with your wrist. It does slightly, but really not a problem. My Rolex Submariner's crown interferes with my wrist too. I like to wear my watches closer to the curve or bend in my wrist, so for me that's just where I wear them. You guys might wear it a little bit higher up and it would be less of an issue. Honestly, it's not a factor for me. The strap has plenty of adjustment. I mean, if you have a very large wrist, you're going to have several holes there in order to, wear this strap definitely way out to an 8-inch sized wrist. There's only 1 or 2 more holes there for smaller wristed people, but again, I don't think that this watch is going to be for anybody with a wrist much smaller than mine. So yeah, there you go, guys. There's the Alpina Startimer Pilot on my 6 3/4 inch wrist. It's okay, but it's a little big. Alright guys, I'm going to hop back over to the studio view with my final thoughts about this watch, so stick with me for a couple of more minutes. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed the presentation of the Alpina Startimer Pilot Automatic. Definitely a really cool watch, definitely high quality. I am a little disappointed that it's not a bit smaller so that I could really wear it and enjoy it more. It's just a little bit too large for my wrist in terms of size and scale and in presentation as well, as we discussed in the tabletop. The price is another small point of contention. MSRP of $995 is a little bit steep for this watch in my opinion, considering that you find it on the gray market in the $625 to $650 range. That's where I would start considering pulling the trigger on this. But then you look at the pre-owned, eBay market, and you're seeing pre-owned examples sell for $350 or thereabouts. So it's a little bit difficult for me to suggest spending full MSRP on this watch. Now, if you had an authorized dealer, which I don't have any Alpina authorized dealers local to me. I'm not sure what kind of discount you could expect there, but I would certainly expect one. I know a lot of you guys like to buy watches brand new, with the warranty, with all the paperwork. That's cool. I am the same way as well, but you got to be a little careful on this one so that you don't overspend, because there are good deals to be had, and certainly at pre-owned prices at $350 or thereabouts, it's actually a steal in my opinion. Well, thanks again for tuning in. I appreciate it when all of you guys come and watch my videos. If you would like to help support the channel, as always, there's a number of ways that you can do that. They're all found down in the description of my videos. You'll see links to my social media accounts. I do encourage you to go over to Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter and follow me on your preferred social media platform. I don't inundate you with content over there, but if you want to keep kind of current with what I'm doing, you'll see that I talk about what's coming, and you'll also get notifications of new reviews as they're posted online. So definitely follow me over on those platforms if you wouldn't mind. Next, Patreon support. I've got a couple of you guys over on Patreon helping me out. I truly do appreciate that, but I could always use a little bit more. So if anyone else would like to help support the channel, throw a few bucks a month my way, head over to Patreon and sign up there. Finally, a lot of people are using my Amazon affiliate links. They're always found in the description of my video. I have to say thank you very much for that. I get a small commission whenever you click on one of those links and purchase something that I've reviewed in the past, or anything else for that matter. So thanks to all you guys that are using those links. Those commissions add up. They help support the channel. I really, really appreciate it. Well, that's going to close out this video for today, so thanks again, and until next week, have a good one. Bye now.